being like a pinball ball in the machine. You know how it is? It hits those bumpers and it's supercharged. Bounces off the walls one after another, and each time it hits a wall, it just gets more charged and going back and forth. And that's how Jared was in the house during Thanksgiving time. And Mom tried to calm him down. Dad even came to the rescue and gave him some ultimatums. But Jared just wouldn't stop. And then Mom and Dad got a little stronger, and Jared became defiant. And even though it was Thanksgiving, Mom and Dad administered in that era, which was considered just normal discipline. They bent Jared across the knee and warmed his backside as a reminder of how he needed to act. And it used to work back then, right? Right? Yeah. Jared came up, grabbed his hindquarters, and said, "Thank you." Parents were totally surprised, thinking that maybe he had arrived at a moment of inspiration, some transformational thing. They said, "Jared, why did you say thank you?" He thought for a minute and he said, "Well, when the plumber charged you too much, you still said thank you. You told me I had to thank Aunt Henrietta for the spinach surprise loaf. When I got a shot at the doctor's office, you told me to tell the doctor thank you. I thought you were supposed to say thanks when it hurt." Sometimes we really don't know when we should say thanks. And sometimes we go through the actions because we think we're supposed to, not because we really mean it. The problem isn't that we don't say thanks. The problem really is that we don't experience gratitude. The problem is what? We don't experience gratitude. It's one thing to have the words come out from the lips, but it has to be something that comes from the heart. And today, it's easy to go through the motions and just do whatever we're supposed to do, right? If that's what I'm required to do, that's what I will do. Growing up, and that really is me, I was handsome back then, right? Almost the same kind of haircut. Growing up, one of the things that I loved is having brothers, and yes, that's actually my brothers. Having 3 brothers meant 4 boys in the house, and my mom and dad were always thankful for bedtime. But at bedtime was also one of the things we liked, and I remember some of the little games that we used to play. One was my older brother, who was on the top bunk bed, used to take, and he had this ocean fishing line that he had found in a car someplace when we lived in the wrecking yard. He found this ocean fishing line, and he tied it to a little green army man. And he would drop it over the side of the bed, and my job was to grab it before he got it back up. And if I grabbed it, then I could pull him over the side of the bed if I got it just right. That was one of the most fun games. Other than there was the pillow fights, which were also enjoyable at nighttime, right? Any of you have pillow fights with your siblings? Any of you still have pillow fights with your husband or wife? But the game I liked the most was Sunday morning. Now, Sunday morning, my parents slept in. Or maybe they just figured that they had the right to some talk time. But whatever it was, we were required to stay in the bedroom until our parents told us it was time to come out. But being young kids, we woke up really early. All of us were awake. But my younger brother, Brian, he always pretended like he was asleep. And the game came in at this. Brian knew that he wasn't asleep. We all knew that Brian wasn't asleep. But the game came in that Brian didn't know that we knew that he wasn't asleep. So we would play the game like this. If Brian was really asleep, and we would start naming things. If Brian were really asleep, he would be snoring. And then a sound came from the bed that sounded like a bulldog who'd just been choked down. The same sound that Dad made in his recliner when he was watching TV. That sound came and he started snoring away. One of my other brothers picked it up. We know that Brian's not really asleep, because if Brian were really asleep, He'd be rolling back and forth in the bed. And suddenly, on cue, the covers began to move back and forth. As like a rolling pin, he'd roll back and forth, eyes closed the whole time. And then for the finale, Brian's not really asleep. Because if Brian were really asleep, he would get down and run around on all fours and bark like a dog. And suddenly, on cue, the covers came back. He bounced around the room on all fours, barked like a dog, and got back into bed. And we all knew Brian was really asleep. Sometimes we go through the actions to say, if you're really asleep, if you're really thankful, these are the things that you will do. And so we pretend to try to impress everybody else that we really have that in our heart, when reality is it's not there. Do you know what I'm saying? 3 people do. What about the rest of you? Do you understand what I'm saying? So we say, if you're really thankful, you'll say grace at the time that it comes for your meal. You'll bow your heads and say thank you. If you're really thankful, you'll return a thank you card and show that you really do care. If you're really thankful to someone, you'll give them a little gift. They've done something nice for you, and you return it as a gift to say, we really did appreciate it. If you're really thankful, at the right time, you'll embrace them and give them a hug. If you're really thankful as a Christian, you'll stand up and give a testimony. If you're really thankful, this is what it looks like. So we tell them. And people go through all the actions, but they're no more thankful than my brother was asleep. They're just doing what they're supposed to do to look thankful. If you're really thankful, what would it look like? Miss Wilson, 81-year-old school teacher from Cleveland, Ohio, was there at her house at night when a robber broke in. Full mask, gun, going to take and rob everything in her place. In the middle of everything, suddenly the robber stops. And he pauses for a moment, looks at her again and says, are you Mrs. Wilson? She's trembling. She says, yes. Did you teach at Vermont High School? Did you teach the kids when they were little? Well, yes. I was one of your students. You were the nicest teacher that I had. You wrote nice things on my paper. I remember you gave me lunch a couple times when I didn't have it. You took me home with you during a vacation when my parents weren't going to be around. And with that, he put his gun down, reached over and kissed her on the forehead, and ran out with $281. Thankful doesn't always mean just what you say. Thankful really is how you act. It's how you live, right? It's a part of what's going on in reality for you. Miss Wilson, his beloved school teacher, he was thankful to a point. Sometimes we go through the motions and the actions, though the heart hasn't changed. Like coming and thanking God and praising God at the temple, where one pretends as if he's really thankful when all he's doing is promoting himself. Sometimes we can go through the actions without gratitude ever fitting the heart. The problem isn't that we don't say thanks. The problem is we don't feel gratitude. So, how come? Part of the time is because we have a sense of entitlement. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, God owes me anyway. When it comes down to it, he created me. He has to take care of me. He's like my heavenly daddy. It's his responsibility. So why should I be thankful for what his duty is? In fact, this shirt says it. God must love me a lot. It's his job. He's got to take care of it. It's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to be. So why do I have to turn and say thanks? You mean he's only giving me this stuff? I thought it was grace. It means I don't deserve it. So why should I have to say thanks if I don't deserve it anyway? Does God expect me to say thanks and turn back to him? The Ten Commandments set up 2 tables of love, how to demonstrate love. And one of those tables, the first 4 commandments, tell us how we're supposed to, how we're commanded to love God back. Are you with me? It specifically says that if to love him, we follow those following things in showing him, demonstrating love for him. We worship him. We don't take his name in vain. We don't have other gods. It's showing how we respond in love. And this is love, that we walk in obedience to his commandments. And you have heard from the beginning, his command is that you walk in love. Romans 2, verse 4 says it this way, or do you think lightly of the riches of his kindness and the tolerance and patience, not knowing that the kindness of God leads you to repentance? The kindness of God looks for the response of repentance. God means that our mercy should bring from our heart a response of gratitude. It's part of what he calls us to do. So does God expect us to give him thanks? What's the answer? Those same three people are doing wonderfully today. Does God expect us to give thanks? Sing and make music in your heart to the Lord, Ephesians 5:19. In everything, always give thanks to God through Jesus Christ. In everything, always give thanks. It should be the response of our heart. You see, we can be in God's presence and never really appreciate that God is there. Never acknowledge what he's done for us and that he's alive in our lives and he's right before us, and miss God being there. Isn't it true? Prodigal, we often think of the younger son who went off and squandered his living, but there's also a son who's there in God's presence, his father's presence the entire time, and misses all the things that he has from the Father, that he's already given him everything. And he just misses it. There's no gratitude in his heart because he doesn't recognize what God has already given him. His issue? Ingratitude. It's easy to miss what you had. Judas did. Judas was in God's presence just like the other disciples. It's not that Judas didn't receive from Jesus everything the others did, or that he was mistreated. It was that Judas didn't respond with a heart of gratitude. And sometimes we say, I have no reason to be thankful. I have more bill collectors than friends. The only phone calls I get are from phone solicitors. And the closest friends I have are Oprah and Days of Our Lives. They're really not any contact that I have with the real world. We've all heard the stories that are meant to lead us to a sense of gratitude. I think of the story that prompted me in my mind of a man who was so poor and didn't have any way to take care of his family, was just struggling to make ends meet, working at a minimum wage job and working all the hours that he could. And just at the time he thought he'd build up enough to buy a couple of his kids' shoes, the refrigerator went out. And then he's going to buy a used refrigerator for about $100. He gets to the place and he starts complaining to the woman and saying, this $100 was supposed to go for my kids for shoes. She starts crying as the story goes because her kids don't have feet. Sometimes we miss what we do have and think only of what we need. Where do I get gratitude? If I'm supposed to have this gratitude, and I want it more than just an outside form of thanksgiving, where does it come from? How do I make it happen? That's our study for today. It's from Psalm 136. You're welcome to turn there, though all the text will actually be on the screen. You're welcome to turn there if you'd like. And it's an antiphonal psalm, which means that it was meant to be sung in a procession up to the sanctuary and sung antiphonally, with the leader doing one and the repeat afterwards. And so I want you to help me. Would you do that? With your repeat. And your repeat is whenever you see this nice green box, we're going to do, for his steadfast love endures forever. And here's the pace. For his steadfast love endures forever. You're doing great first time around. Let's try it again. For his steadfast love endures forever. Whenever you see the slide like this, it's the text. For his steadfast love endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. For his steadfast love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods, for his steadfast love endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord of Lords, for his steadfast love endures forever. You did good. That's the first 3 verses. I want to take a moment and look at those. It says first, give thanks. To publicly acknowledge or testify, to confess, to give thanks. To recognize that we have a desire to show appreciation. Giving thanks is humbling myself before someone who has given me, met a need of mine. This psalm, if you will, these 3 things will produce gratitude in your heart. It will tell us who he is, and when we see who he is, we understand who we are, and that he has a plan for our life. So let's look at give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. Who is he? It says he is good. Good is such an ordinary word to us. We hardly use it or think of what it means. If I were to ask you to come up with a definition for good, how would you define it? What would you use to explain it? What is good or goodness? Whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever is admirable, if there's anything excellent or praiseworthy, these are the things. What is goodness? Goodness is the opposite of evil. It's its contrast. When I realize who God is and his goodness, and then I start looking at who I am, and I'm the opposite by nature. It's true, isn't it? He's selfless, I'm selfish. He's light, my life starts in darkness. I'm the opposite of who he is. When I realize who he is and who I am, that I'm part of the tribe who's withdrawn themselves, thinking that they can do it on their own, that I'm part of Adam and Eve's child. Every son of Adam and every daughter of Eve has come to the place of withdrawing themselves from God. Then I realize what a miraculous thing is that he has a plan to move his light into my darkness, his goodness into my evil, his righteousness into my selfishness, and transform me to be like him. That produces gratitude. Give thanks to the God of gods, those first 3 texts, for steadfast love endures forever. Who is he? You notice it said back here, it says the God of gods. The phrase that's used there, the title there is the Almighty, the El Shaddai, the great God, the powerful God, the Almighty God. It says give thanks to the Almighty God, the one who's in control, who has it all covered, who's not surprised by what's happening in my life, who understands what's going on and is able to make it work out. That whatever I entrust to him, he's able to take care of. Who is he? He's God Almighty. The worst moment of the atheist's life is when he's really thankful and has nobody to thank. He looks at the beautiful sunset, but he can't thank God. He realizes something that's happened in kindness and grace, and he doesn't have a place to turn to. Who am I? I'm the one who's not in control. I'm powerless. Can I add one day of my life by my own power? Can I choose to give myself some extra days at the end? Do I have power to take control and change all situations? I'm dependent on him. I'm out of control. When I realize he's God Almighty, sovereign, and that he has all the power, then I have to say, wow, that's not who I am. I'm not God. The good news is that he has a plan for my life to come and join me like a king coming to take his bride and move her from the status of being a commoner and raise her up to the position of royalty by the very connection that she has with him. That's God coming to raise us up to the rightful position. Give thanks to the Lord of Lords, for his steadfast love endures to ever. Who is he? It says he is Lord. If you look at your translations, it has all caps. It's from the personal name Yahweh. It means the personal God, the covenant God. Not only is he the Almighty God, who's the sustainer and in charge of everything, he's the personal God, the covenant God, who comes to us personally to take care of our need, who wants an interaction with us and a connection with us. When I realize who he is, I realize so often that I do just the opposite. I hide and try to shelter myself and push God and others out. My life is often empty. I don't look to include. And God is saying the things that you search to make your life full is not what you need. You need me. He has a plan to move into my life and give me security, and give me hope. To him who alone does great wonders, for his steadfast love endures forever. Who by his understanding made the heavens, for his steadfast love endures forever. Who spread out the earth upon the waters, for his steadfast love endures forever. Who made the great lights, for his steadfast love endures forever. The sun to govern the day, for his steadfast love endures forever. The moon and stars to govern the night, for his steadfast love endures forever. Who is he? That whole section comes to say the same thing. He's our creator. I don't know, did you hear the child's prayer this morning? Said, thank you for making brother and sister and mom, dad. Even the fact that she said, thank you for brothers, that's a pretty amazing thing. Who is he? He says, he's the creator. He's the one who formed us and made us. That should produce in me as his creature, recognizing who he is and who I am, the desire to worship, to say, I'm just a created thing, and I want to praise my creator who made me, who chose to bring me into existence. Not all children are born from choice. Isn't it true? Isn't it true? But when you look at this whole process, God chose to bring us into life, chose to have us. He desired to have communion with us, desired for that relationship. He's our creator and wanted us to be with him, formed us to be in fellowship with him. He has a plan for my life. He created me for a purpose, and that purpose is to live with him forever. To him who struck down the firstborn of Egypt, for his steadfast love endures forever, and brought Israel out from among them, for his steadfast love endures forever. With a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, for his steadfast love endures forever. To him who divided the Red Sea asunder, for his steadfast love endures forever, and brought Israel through the midst of it, for his steadfast love endures forever. But swept Pharaoh and his army into the midst of the sea, for his steadfast love endures forever. To him who led the people through the desert, for his steadfast love endures forever. Who struck down great kings, for his steadfast love endures forever. And killed mighty kings, for his steadfast love endures forever. Sihon, king of the Amorites, for his steadfast love endures forever. Og, king of Bashan, for his steadfast love endures forever. And gave their lands as an inheritance, for his steadfast love endures forever. An inheritance to his servant Israel, for his steadfast love endures forever. Who is he? It outlines the succession of God's deliverances for his people. All the time that he delivered them, time and time again, how he won the battle on their behalf, who he set their foes at odds and sent them out and brought his people through. He's the deliverer. He's not only the good God, he's not only the all-powerful God, he's not only the personal God, but it says he's my personal deliverer. He brought me out. He freed me. He is my redeemer. He's come on that white horse to rescue the damsel in distress. I'm a captive. And there's so many things that captivate me. And it's not just Israel in the past. Haven't there been things in the past, or maybe for some of us even today, that hold us captive? Isn't it true? That we struggle against oppressors in our life. Some addiction that keeps us from moving forward. Some painful memory from yesterday that we can't seem to shake. And it says that he has a plan to set us free. He's our deliverer. When he realizes we're captives, he marches in for a purpose to bring us deliverance, to take care of the issues in our life. Psalm 136:23 continues, the one who redeemed me in my humble estate, for his steadfast love endures forever, and freed us from our enemies, for his steadfast love endures forever, who gives food to all flesh, for his steadfast love endures forever. He's the one who sustains me. Who is he? He's the one who provides for me and takes care of my need, who gives me food and drink and warmth and love when I'm starving and desperate for all of those things. He's the one who keeps supplying my need, who ministers to me in that way. Who am I? I'm sometimes so ungrateful. In the world in which we live, I've been born with this silver spoon in my mouth, and sometimes, like the spoiled brat, don't take into consideration all that God has really given me. Haven't we been blessed? Haven't we been blessed? His plan for me is to shower his grace upon me. Psalm 136, verse 26, give thanks to the God of heaven, for his steadfast love endures forever. Haven't you been noticing a phrase that's kind of been repeated throughout the psalm? First, I will say the psalm is a song. That's what psalm stands for, right? Right? And I just want to call attention because sometimes we talk about contemporary music and I hear people say, oh, well, it keeps repeating the same verse over and over and over again. I'll just say it's not new. Because sometimes there's something worth repeating, a thought that governs everything else, that wells up in your heart, and you repeat that thought in a way of recognizing the glory of God, and his steadfast love endures forever. Do you know what that phrase means? That is, it looks at all of the experiences of God, whether he's the Almighty, whether he's come as our personal God, whether it's what he's done in delivering us from our enemy as our Redeemer, whether he's our Creator or our Sustainer, that all of that is based on the fact that he didn't stop loving us, that his love continues to shower upon us. Like waves coming of the ocean onto the shores, just keeps coming endlessly. His steadfast love continues to flow into my life. He's the enduring lover who comes to me personally, showers me with this love. That's how gratitude should well up. See, I'm such an inconsistent wanderer. I like the song. It says, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. It's so easy for us, isn't it? Then the prayer is, take my heart, take and seal it for thy courts above. That is, I know myself, I know my heart, and I want to give that to you because I'm so naturally a wanderer that I wander away from even you. And I'm just asking that you'll seal me for your courts because you have mercy that keeps showering upon you. This should take, and the joy of what God's done should pluck the strings of our heart to sing a song of praise back to him. My gratitude should well up when I realize who he is, who I am, and what he's done. It should just be natural sense of gratitude. But then I have to say, how do I say thanks? First, I just ask, if you woke up today with only the things that you thanked God for yesterday, what would you have? Would you have your health? Do you have your family? Do you have your job? Do you have your church? Would you have the Bible? What if just you were able to keep all that you thanked God for this last week? Still have those things? This last month? It's easy for me to take for granted all that God's given me. Then I have to say, so how do I say thanks? I mean, you look at different levels of saying thanks for different things, right? I mean, somebody gives me a ride on their vehicle, and I could say, man, that was fun. Thank you. If they come and shovel my walk, have my wife make cookies for them and bring them out, right? If it's an employee who's doing an exceptional job, you give them a little bonus, maybe increase in pay, a way of saying thank you. How do you say thanks to somebody who's loved you once you've rejected them? How do you say thank you to somebody who gives you a gift that's you could never pay back? How do you say thanks for somebody creating you, bringing you to life, and choosing that? Words just seem not to be enough to express that kind of gratitude, to say thank you for God doing that. How do you say thanks for somebody who's healed you and restored you and forgiven you after you've rejected them and you've purposely turned away from them and then they receive you back? How do you say thanks to that kind of God? How do you say thanks to somebody who stood in your place when you deserved punishment and sin? What do you do to thank somebody for giving you life and taking your death and being separated from the Father? How do you say thanks for that kind of gift? Writing a note's okay, even vocalizing words. But how do you say thanks in a way that's meaningful? One of the things I tried to teach my kids was to go through and say, look, you should raise to the level of the gift that was given you in response. I mean, you shouldn't treat the person who gives you the kidney the same way as you treat the person who gives you their place in line. It's a different kind of thanks, right? How do you thank somebody who's given their life for you, who's taken your place, who suffered through your sin, who took their sin upon themselves? How do you say thanks for that? I think there are 4 things that we can do to respond to God in that way, because words aren't enough. One is that we never forget the gift. We never forget what God's done for us, that we rehearse in our mind who he is, and we keep that fresh, that gift is clear and there, and that we remind ourselves about it, that we take his word and saturate ourselves in what he's done for us, in what he's done in that offering, that we'll repeat to others the kind of gift. I can tell you, if you got a car for your graduation, I see some teenagers smiling. If you got a car for your graduation, you tell your friends. You'd repeat it and rehearse it. Every time you drove that car, you'd be thinking about your wonderful parents. Or if you want, you can give my kid a car. They'll be thinking about you. And that gratitude will well up every time they drive that car. When I stop and pause and say, what kind of thing do? I remind myself of who the gift came from and where it is. I never forget who it is who's given me this gift. The first thing I do to show gratitude is I never forget him. The second thing, I use it. If I've been given wings, I fly. Right? If I've been given food, I eat it. I make use of the gift that's given to me. It's not what we say about our blessings, but how we use them is the true measure of our thanksgiving. If you've been given the gift or talent of singing, and I was blessed this morning by your song as amazing testimony for God, weren't you? Say, if you've been given a gift, you should use it. If you have a painting, you should hang it. And when you've been forgiven, when God's poured out love for you, when you've been given a new life, you should live that life. You should celebrate that forgiveness. The first thing is you never forget it. You remember who's given you the gift. The second thing is, what? You guys are good. You use it. The third thing is you share it. That love comes to you and overflows and goes to everyone else. I know that when I sent my son mochi. He likes mochi. How many of you are mochi lovers? Most of you say, I don't even know what mochi is. Okay, there's a handful of mochi lovers. That's kind of was my response too. What's mochi? But he loves mochi. You have to look it up when you get home, figure out what that is. Mochi. When he has mochi, I'll send him mochi probably once every three months. I'll send him from Amazon, which is my favorite place to buy. Send him mochi. Just send him mochi. And they're Japanese desserts. And he gets a pack of mochi, And I can tell you, when he was in the dorm, they always had a mochi night whenever he got mochi. Because he invited all his friends over and he'd share his mochi because some of them hadn't heard about it and some of them liked it. And when they liked it, they were waiting for the next time that he got mochi. He wanted to share it. It's a natural thing when we've been given something, right? Especially if it doesn't end. Like you find a place that's absolutely beautiful, you want to share it with everybody else to let them see, to take in this beauty. You want for them to have the blessing. Even if it means you have to knock on the door to tell them, hey, let me tell you what I got, that you can have too. Let me tell you about this coupon that's here that'll give you free Wi-Fi. Let me talk to you about the special offer that's on right now because you can get it too. It's good news. Who doesn't want to share good news, right? The fourth thing is you give yourself. How do I show gratitude? I show gratitude by remembering who it's from. I show gratitude by using what's been given to me. I show gratitude by sharing it with others. And I show gratitude by giving myself. Let me explain what I mean. In Oriental country, if somebody saved your life, you owed them that life. That is, you were to become their servant, their slave, to respond to them. They'd given you life. Now you were to use that life and give it back to them. Unless you were to save them, and then you were equal. But until then, you lived your life in service to them. When we talk about a living sacrifice, that is recognizing we've been given life back and living that life in gratitude back to God. To thank him for what he's done for us. To recognize all that he's done. Psalm 136:26 says, give thanks to the God of gods, and then it explains why. For his steadfast love endures forever. I hope that for you, it causes gratitude to well up inside. When we realize what an awesome God that we have, what he's done for us, his plan for our life, that it causes you to respond by saying, how can I say thanks for all the things you've